Hey, Gronzo92. Changing my system up here. Oh. Oh, that doesn't do it. Hold on, I gotta go there. Alright. Alright. Got myself up here. We are working today on getting people the skills they need to get into IT. Oh, wait a minute. Interesting. I wonder if this... South Africa will rise. That's funny. I'm looking right now at my... I'm going to keep an eye on this because the Streamlabs desktop, I wonder if it's going to keep my multi-stream stuff so I can see if people come in over on YouTube. I don't normally stream to both, but I've been thinking I'll do a little more YouTube again. I don't know what happened today, but maybe something popped up on LinkedIn or something, but like we got a bunch of follows in the channel and had a bunch of people like messaging me on LinkedIn, so I was like, I don't know, maybe something happened over on LinkedIn, I don't know. Because I post every now and then that we've got a Linux group that people can come and hang out in and all that stuff. So if you guys don't know about that, yeah, South Africa. We've got a Discord. You guys are welcome to hang out down in the Discord. Thanks for the follow, D Flair. Hopefully this stuff's useful. We are normally on Sundays, which I didn't even get on yesterday. Normally Sundays are kind of like my busiest days. I just do labs, and we just go through stuff and do that. Labs. L-A-B-S, not laps. Labs. Okay. So anyways, we'll do some labs today because I didn't really get on yesterday at all. So if anybody wants to do any labs with me, I'm going to pin the newer labs that we have, and we'll walk through some of these little pieces. Hey, Less Than T, how's it going? I know a few people from our community are out kind of looking for work right now. Some of my oldest people in the group have recently left, like 10 years in security with a big company, big credit card company, and then some of the guys just had their first job and it was like a smaller contract and that ended. So yeah, nice. Yeah, I do like I don't know if Rob saw me come on. I was watching Rob a few minutes ago. I saw him get off the paddle board and start walking through the woods, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stream for a little bit. So I hopped on. But yeah, thanks for the subscription. I don't know, it looks like my sound's all messed up because I'm not getting any alerts or anything right now. So I wonder, I was playing with my alerts the other day, so maybe I didn't turn them all on or something. But let's do this real quick. Yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys. The Prime from D Flair and Gronzo, you guys are great. Yeah, let's do a little bit of Linux stuff. We have a lot of Linux in the environment, a lot of things to go play with. And for newer people, if you've never seen Killer Coda is a completely free site that exists out there for you guys to go. Yeah, I actually have a Prime sub from the 8th. It came up again, so I need to go use my Prime sub on somebody. I haven't done that in a while. But let's pull this up. So I'm gonna put the lab in the Discord or in the over on the YouTube side. I'll drop it over here for you guys as well. And then now it looks like it's coming up, like things are popping up. I don't know if my alerts were just like way behind or something. 0 to Hero Journey, nice. Nice. All right, so check this out. The way these labs go, when I build labs, I walk you through them. I don't have, hey SM, how's it going? I don't have a lot of like tricky stuff in my labs. My labs are designed to kind of have you follow along through them, and even if you don't understand all the pieces that you're initially building, what will happen is over time you will start to see how things work, and you'll like pick it up and kind of hold it in your hand, and you'll grok it over time, right? Like you'll get this understanding of things. So by the way, sometimes people want to see Ranger. There's Ranger downstairs. He's not moving around. And somebody wants to see a conditional loop. Now, done, right? That's a simple conditional loop. Conditional loops are based on testing for true or false in an equation or in some kind of statement. In my case, I use true, so I made an infinite loop right there. That loop will continue until the server stops running, or I hit Control C or something like that. What it does is the structure of a loop is while some condition, and the condition is testing for truth, do something until done. Now that might be really easy and simple for some of you, but for some of you that have never maybe seen a bash loop before, that's as easy as it gets. Now they start getting more complex. I can start to use different things. Like this says, while not the existence of temp finished, just sit here and spin, and the system will sit there and spin, And then once that file gets written by a backgrounded script that I have, then it'll drop us into a shell and say that we can start the lab. So that's how this lab kind of works. That's how that part works anyways. So there's your conditional loop. Spoiler redeemed. Hopefully it's useful to you. This is really, really good systems administration type stuff. Not necessarily good computer science, but it's really good like systems administration. Like a team's about to start up some Java process that they have and they don't know why it's been crashing. So I'll have a loop of things running while I'm watching what's going on the server and see, you know, why the application's not starting up. Now they should also be watching their logs and all these other things, but I'm the guy that's running the system. If that makes sense. I'm always the platform engineer. I'm always the system engineer underneath everything. So here for this lab, it says your team is determined they need to run a firewall on all the hosts to protect them from the inevitable compromise of your system. Who knows how you got to that, right? Most people get here, and the fights that I've had over the last 20 years is PCI requirements. PCI requirements will say you must do this, and then your GRC team, which is part of security, they'll come down and they'll hammer you and be like, you got to do this. So the goal here is to have your system only capable of exposing the ports that you have documented and agreed upon with your security team. So we're going to do that. So we're going to check the status of UFW. It'll probably be off. That's the universal firewall. Turn on and enable it, and then verify the current state of it. That's all we're going to do to start. That's the whole start of this lab. So on this node, we're going to jump over to SSH to node 01. We started on control plane. We jumped to node 01. And we are the root user. So I think it's important. A lot of people get in these labs and they're like, oh, you're not even root. If you care that much, you can fix your PS1 variable right there. And if you say, I got to fix it, you know, for the lab or whatever, just set your PS1 equal to this if you need to. Right? Like if you just can't stand not being, right? Hey, Robodom, how's it going? Robodom's one of our guys who he's been with the group for quite some time. He's one of my mods, and we're getting him ready and some of the other guys ready for their Security Plus. So people have been studying that and working on that. Few people, I think less than T is one of them, have recently passed the Security Plus, and it's one of those ones that it's a really good baseline cert in the industry to get you that level. Like if you want to go do Fed jobs or even a lot of state jobs, having that Security Plus is a really good kind of low-level baseline for all that. In fact, there's a government standard that says Security Plus is one of the base ones that you want to have. All right, so we SSH to node 01, and let's just check real quick. We see that it's inactive, but it's ready to start. So systemctl status UFW, we see that it's active and the service is running, but the firewall itself is set in an inactive state. Yeah, Robodom, there's a lot of stuff to keep track of and study there. Oh, looks like we had a little hype train. That's kind of cool. I appreciate you guys all throwing bits and stuff. Helps keep me motivated. If I say UFW enable here, it says this may disrupt existing SSH connections. Are you sure you want to start? And I say send it. And then it says that it's active and it's started up. Yeah, extremely big. I can see that. It's a good positive differentiator for you though, hopefully. And by the way, we were putting together. This was one the other day that we were looking at. Like we went and just found some job online, and then we were walking through some of the pieces of this. And I'm gonna integrate some of these things here with the big course that I've been putting together for our ProLug people that want to kind of just get some Linux in them and get one of these little things that says that you at least put together 120, you at least went through a 120-hour course, you know? I want you guys to know that that's going. Also, for people that have bought the book before, LeanPub allows you can keep downloading the book forever. For anybody that does have the book, I'm going to be putting out the last version of it before the end of this month. That's my goal. I want to have the last version. So I need to update all the Ansible stuff. And then I need to update the. There's a few more labs that I've built, and I'm going to put them in there before it, and then it'll be done. Yeah, I'm almost done with Into the Labyrinth, by the way, as well. That's a really good book. It's part of Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's book series called The Deathgate Cycle. Pretty fun book I read in high school, and it's been pretty good to me It's nice to have some kind of adventure and fun reading that isn't all just my college doctoral work reading, you know. So, yeah, Robdom, I appreciate you being around. So, let's do this. We turned on the firewall, and let's check the status now. We see that the status is active, so this firewall is doing something, but what is it doing? You know. By the way, while we're connected here, we can open up. By the way, we can open up another tab here real quick, and say, can I SSH to node 01 right now? I cannot SSH to node 01 anymore. Look at that. This is hanging right here. That's not connecting. Now the connection that's already open is still open because it was already an established connection. But I want you guys to think about this. If I allow this now, if I allow OpenSSH into that firewall, and I come back over here and reconnect, now I immediately logged in. So then, you know, knowing that and going through this lab a little bit, what if I go look at the status? Now I see that the status says I'm going to allow OpenSSH from anywhere and OpenSSH port 22 for IPv6. That's what the V6 stands for, is IPv6. And it says that we're listening to it. And then if we say UFW status verbose, it's going to give us a little bit more. We've got the deny incoming, allow outgoing, deny routed. So those are important states. We're going to deny anything coming in that's not one of these rules. We're going to allow traffic going out with no exceptions, although we could block traffic going out. If this device needed to be only talking to things locally, we could disallow things outgoing from this device right here, right on the device, right within the firewall. And then it says deny routing. Now, the kernel of the Linux system will, if you turn on IPv4 routing, it will forward traffic around the network if you tell it to. If you tell it how to get to different portions of your network, your Linux box can become a router like that. It's that simple. In fact, we have a box in my network that acts as a router. Yeah, it's right here. This is C router right here. And he's sitting here and he's forwarding some traffic off around the network. Right? He's got different things that he's going to do. Rodom, yeah, this is one of the labs. Did I not pin it? I know I posted it, but I don't think I pinned it. So hold on a second. I'll drop it over. By the way, Rodom, we're on YouTube as well today. But here's the pin for the lab. I'll just leave it for 20 minutes. I'm not going to change it. But then I said, what's the difference between the two outputs? Well, the first one just tells me what's being allowed. And the second one is a little more verbose, and it tells me what the logging version is, and then also the default profiles that are associated, right? So there's like a lot of stuff that I can play with here. And by the way, then if you're doing this and you say, well, I want to know a little more about that UFW, you can always man UFW right here. And look at all this. You could do --dry run. --dry run almost always means that it will not make an official change, but it'll tell you what the changes would be. That's always really nice. When things let you do dry runs, there's a lot of different tools. Ansible's big on dry runs. So is Kubernetes. You can see what would happen with an imperative command without actually changing anything. And that's super powerful, right? Because as engineers, stability is always king. Stability is real big in systems world. So, all right. So yeah, dry run is don't modify anything. Just show the changes. That actually would have been good for me to add in this. But we can enable or disable it. We can reload it if we need to. And we can look at the defaults. So look at all these things that we can go play with, right? Lots and lots of stuff to do. You can allow simply anything on port 53. So if you allow 53 like this, it's going to allow 53 TCP and UDP, right? Because for DNS, you have to allow both. Especially in Kubernetes, you have to allow both TCP and UDP connections for your DNS to work properly. But down here, allow port 25, but only for TCP, right? Not any UDP connection like that. And then if you say something like allow SMTP, then that'll be allowed by name as well. But then those profiles, you can go configure those profiles. You can even write your own profiles if you want as well. So they've got a bunch of information here, so I like that. You can also use classless inter domain routing, CIDR type nomenclatures if you want. And this one would match anything that came from 10. When you do a /8, you say match just the first octet, and then the rest would be irrelevant. It would just match everything, right, to port 25. So deny proto TCP from anywhere in here to there on port 25. So there's that. You could also do it with IPv6 as well, if you care about doing that. A lot of people aren't running IPv6 in their own networks, or if they are, it's dual honed. Like in my home lab, a lot of labs are like this too. If I did IP adder, we would see the primary address here, 192.168.200.1, which is the internal network that this routes to. But there's also an IPv6 address, but most people aren't really using that. But that is pingable. That is a usable address on my network if I wanted to. But it's an internal, yeah, it's just one that I'm using internally. Okay. So I've hit check here. It says, okay, so now we've enabled UFW and verified that we could see the open ports that are allowed to be connected to on my host. Now we're going to set up a web server on node 01. So we're going to set up Apache 2. Yeah, Robodom, it's a huge collection. In fact, the number of IP addresses in there it's more than we can fathom, because it's 2 raised to the 128. So anybody that cares, 2 caret 128, pretty big number. That's 3.4, and then you take that point right there and move it 38 times to the right. Right? Remember all that from math? You draw the little. It's a lot of spaces. Yeah, Robodom, IPv4 addresses have been almost exhausted since the early 2000s. We just have all the internal non-routable addresses that allow it to keep working. But IPv4 has been pretty much almost exhausted since late 90s, early 2000s. For example, I was in college for my networking degree from 04 to 06. That's when I did my bachelor's. I had been in networking back to 2000, but 04 to 06 was when I did my my college on networking. And I remember back then they were like, IPv6 is coming, IPv4 is out the window, there's no more space. And it's like, but it's still kicking now, 20 something years later, you know. So but you know, you will see in your ISPs and stuff, you will see IPv6 pretty much everywhere. All right, so let's do this, right? What are we doing? We've locked, we've like shelled off the system, and now we're going to set up a web server so port 80 will be exposed. We could also expose other ports. Verify from control plane that we can't connect to it. We shouldn't be able to. It's not in the allowed in. So from control plane, we should not be able to. We can SSH over there, but I should not be able to curl node 01. Now the web server is not built up, so this would fail anyways, but we should expect a behavior similar to this if I set up the web server. So we'll allow that through the UFW firewall, and then we'll verify that we can connect over. That's the whole rest of the lab. So we'll install Apache 2. Make sure Apache 2 is running on the server. That's apt-y install Apache 2. Super simple. The structure that builds is mostly in etc Apache 2. So here's what we have. System CTL status Apache 2. It's running, right? We've got running. LSO, and here's our stuff that'll verify that our system is listening on those ports, right? So here's ss-ntulp, and we see Apache 2 is listening to port 80 from anywhere. Anyone on port 80. Boom. Thing is, when I try to run a server with IPv6, it doesn't work. It depends. A lot of that depends on if your internal infrastructure has support for IPv6 as well. So if if people have turned that off, or if you have IPv6 like natively shut off inside, some kernels come, some operating systems come with all their sysctl IPv6 turned off, so they have that all off sometimes. So security reasons, efficiency in the network, who knows, but a lot of the times that's turned off, and you have to enable it. And I've actually seen problems where we leave it enabled and certain things don't work, so we end up just disabling it and saving ourselves all the trouble, because whatever we're using. So you guys will find that a lot of times nowadays servers are purpose built. We don't have a server like when I stand up a server in a virtual environment. It's not a web server and over here it's a database server too. It's a single purpose device that exists just simply for the sake of being a web server or an application server or whatever. Which, by the way, since we've been doing that, and we've been doing that for 20 years, since we've been doing that so long in systems world, it was super easy when we said, oh, we'll just stand up a bunch of Kubernetes pods, and those pods will be able to just have a service in front of them, and then we'll just hit it and do all this. Those pods will be purpose driven for just being our web tier or our application tier or our database tier. It all that's what we were used to doing anyways. So it wasn't like some paradigm shift that you had to make me like, I had it and I was like, from my cold dead hands, you will pry my server with 50 functions on it. No, because we want to be able to kick over a server anytime. If that web service is down and we need to reset the server, we should be able to do it. So, Inspector's here. Inspector, were you streaming the other day? I thought I saw you pop up. I think you were doing something the other day. But that's okay. So back to this. My system, Node 01, is listening to that port right now, but it is not turned on. If we do our UFW again, status verbose, it is not allowed through the firewall. So my prediction then is when I come back here, and this is, I tell you guys a lot of times in engineering, we test hypotheses, right? Some of you have probably done some research work, and it's like, well, we can never prove a positive. We can always just disprove the null hypotheses. Well, sometimes in the systems world, I say, well, that should be open, but I know there's a firewall in between, so I know I shouldn't be able to connect. And then there's this old saying in engineering, one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. So we could sit here and argue all day about what's going to happen, or I could just hit the button. What? Oh, I'm on Node 0. I'm on Node 01. This is interesting behavior. Node 01 should be able to see itself because it's not being blocked by the firewall. But can control plane curl Node 01? We know that's listening. We know that. It's listening, and internally on 127.0.0.1 it can hit itself. But can this guy hit it? Nope. And if you just wanted to see if the port was open, you could use netcat. Right, netcat's an awesome tool. Node 01, port 80, and if you want, you just do like a -vz, and it'll just tell you that a connection was succeeded or not. This is not going to succeed. Yeah, Inspector, I need to get back into Khan Academy a little bit. I have some statistics stuff to work on. I'm going to be doing a significant amount of statistics in my upcoming college stuff, so I need to work on that a little more than I have been. Okay, see, that's never going to connect, guys. It's just holding open. So let's go back to Node 01. So SSH, whoops, we're back on Node 01 over here. On this one, let's exit Node 01. You don't have to have both open like I do. I just had them both, these two different tabs, just to show you guys. So check this out. Over here on control plane, I can't connect. I can't get, nothing's coming back. That timeout shows an error code of some BS, right? That's not a good error code. For people that aren't like doing a lot of Linux or don't care so much about computer science, let me just tell you, anything other than 0 is bad. And typically you get 0 or 1. This is 124. That's something that timeout does. Like if timeout ends up killing a session, it always throws some weird error code. I think it's like 124 most of the time. Okay, so now we're going to jump back to Node 01 and let's look at the app list. There's more apps here than there were before. So like linear algebra, yeah, probably. Yeah, that's good to practice that stuff, Inspector. I need to I use the math that I use pretty often, but I don't, the stuff that I haven't used as much has kind of fallen to the wayside, so I need to pick up a lot more of my statistics and probability type stuff. So we can go look at these. We can look at these Apache ones, and if we do, we'll see that on the UFW info for Apache, we get that it's going to be port 80 TCP. That makes sense. That's the web server, right? That's the default port for web if you don't know that. Apache full is going to do port 80 and port 443. So it's going to do port 80 that we're listening on, and then 443 for security. Sometimes 443, by the way, is HTTPS, but sometimes people will use alternate ports like 8080 and 8443. Those are common ports as well. And then if we just did secure, we would see 443. Now, you might say, well, Scott, how do I know what ports my system's listening to by default? Well, you just stood up an Apache server, so it's only port 80. But if you needed to change that, we have labs where you can change that. And I'll walk you guys through it real quick just because we're in the lab and we have it built. But there's a different lab that we have where I make you turn on port 80, 8080, 8081, and 8082, just as examples of different environments. I'll just show you guys here real quick. Etsy Apache 2. In here, you have this ports.conf. It should be ports.conf. And right here, you're just listening on port 80. But if somebody uses an SSL module, it can listen on port 443. And then if they're trying to use mod GNU TLS, that's also going to listen on 443, all right? So this can listen on these other ones. Let's see if it is. I see Apache listening on port 80. And I do not see 443. This is some other one. That's just some other port that's not it. But I don't see Apache listening on 443. All right. We can make Apache listen on whatever we want with a directive like this. And yeah, we might not even have the SSL module. Oops. Oh, sorry, wrong one. DPKG-L rep. Yeah, I don't even see that. And then whatever this other one is. I don't know, and that may be packaged up as part of something else, who knows. But we're going to allow Apache through the firewall on node 01. And if we do that, and then we go look at the verbose one again, which should be right here, we will see that now it's allowing that in. So if I go to this other one, while I'm just kind of sitting here, and I do that same exact command that we just did, I should see that connect and tell me we connected. I should be able to come here to curl node 01, and maybe I don't know, I don't want to take the whole screen, but we got a web page back, happened right away, and here's what it looks like. There's our stuff modified from the original Debian for Ubuntu here, and then it's a basic page of whatever HTML that we need to look at, right? And then what do I have over here? I said on this one, if you needed to, you would just exit, and then you would go check, and you would just look that it is in fact Apache default page. So we did a little curl, timeout curl, make sure that we can see the default page. So yeah, what did we do in that lab? Look at you, learning Linux security. You set up a firewall. You set up the UFW firewall that was already on the box. In other systems, you may be using IP tables. IP tables has mostly been deprecated in Red Hat systems, and they use NF tables now. And the preferred method of controlling it is the firewall D module, or the firewall CMD command. And firewall D is the service. You can have, you can do a lot of stuff if you wanted to use this to do a bunch of stuff. In this lab, I simply make you turn it on, and it's like a shell. You open up the Apache port, and then you see that you can't connect through, and then you leave, you allow it, you leave, and then you connect to it, and it works. That's the whole lab. That's the whole thing. It gets you a lot of experience about the stuff. Spectre, what are you talking about? Learning quantum computers could be stonks, but I also like the idea of getting in on the early days of QGate integration. Yeah, it's there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in like supercomputing in general. They have a big supercomputing conference. I think they did it late last year. Let's see what SC 2024. What is SC? Let's see what their thing is called. They did it. Yeah, they did it November 12th through 17th in Denver. But I wonder if they're doing. They have to have SC24 coming up, right? They have 24? Ah, it's in Atlanta, November 17th through the 22nd this time. So that's I heard good things. A lot of my colleagues from the college that I'm doing high performance compute for went to this one. So if anybody wants that one, this is coming up. And they had a lot of interesting stuff that was happening. Also, I believe, if I recall, AWS was pretty big there too, working on getting their stuff in. So you volunteer if you're in the area, go work for them. Typically that just means that when you're not doing your volunteer work, you can just wander around the conference, which a lot of people like. One of our guys, Robodom, does that with some of the conferences in California. You can go out there, you can hang out, do all this kind of stuff, and then once you're done with your work, they just release you to go talk with vendors and rub elbows with people and go watch conference events and that kind of stuff. So it's actually a pretty cool little thing for those guys. All right, so let's talk then. If we were doing that was a Linux lab that we just did. Let's back out to all of our labs, and we're going to go into. I think most of you that have been around, and if you haven't been around, I'll explain this like this. Most of us manage way too many systems, guys, to do that by hand. What you just saw me do would take me, if I had to go do that to like 50 servers or 100 servers, it would be a mess. So what I would do instead is I would use Ansible to do it. So I'm going to show you guys, we're going to do the same thing we just did. Okay, it's slightly different. We're going to set up a web server, and we're going to set up a database server, and we're going to use Ansible then to set up the firewall and allow the ports that we expect to connect. So we're going to do that right now. So I'm going to link this one. Let me get rid of this other pinned lab. But if you guys get lost, you can always go to all of our labs there, and there's all the labs. Also, I saw Robodom post that a little while ago, but that's still important. That's all the labs. If you want to go play with any of our labs, and you can ask the guys. If you go down Discord and say, hey, I was doing the labs and I didn't understand this, and this, that makes me happy, because that means that you were actually down doing the labs, right? So here's this lab. This is the same thing again that we just did, with the caveats that we're gonna expand out and do a web server on one and a database server on the other, and then we're gonna test our connections. Hi, just gonna listen to this while I do labs for Linux for my seat. Nice. Well, hopefully this stuff's useful. If you get stuck on anything, let us know. The Hive Collective here can probably help you out a little bit. The chat here, whether they'll help you out or not is different, but let's see if we can at least try to get them to help you out. Here's our lab activity. So this says create a playbook to push web and database environment. So the very first part of this lab, if we're going to pretend, well, actually no, if we're going to actually expose the ports that we want to, we need the ports open so that we verify the firewall connectivity. So your team has a deployment of web server and database server in an environment. They want to secure the environment so that only the ports that should be exposed are exposed on the correct servers. So we want this, we want that. Hey, Nilium, hopefully this stuff's useful to you. I don't think I've seen you around for a while. I don't know if you've been on, I mean, I swear you used to be around here a lot, but I always appreciate you guys coming by, trying to take that bit leader from Blaze from the other day. I'm just kidding. I don't do this for the bits, guys. I was actually showing this the other day, like, I appreciate bits, but it's mostly I do this because I want you guys to see that you can do this stuff professionally, right? Like, the goal of this is to show you that you do simple things, and over time, those simple things start to look like really complex things, and then you're like, oh, I can do this complex thing. I am completely capable of doing it. So, I'm gonna drop this over on the YouTube side, because again, I haven't been on YouTube in weeks, but I decided to just pop it up today because I was like, I'm gonna hang out and do some systems work for a bit. So this one says, we set up the servers to expose the correct port number. So we'll first use Ansible to set up all the servers. Then we're going to make sure that we can connect to those servers on the exposed ports. That's important. If you've never done that, this could be a good skill for you to see how to hit a bunch of systems in your environment. You may complete this activity yourself, or you may find the answers in the solution below. So if you look at this and say, hey, I know how to expose those ports on those servers, you are welcome to go do it. I'm not trying to, be like, hey, you have to use my solution. There is more than one way to do it. That's Tim Towdy, right? There's more than one way to do it. If you've never seen that. There is more than one way to do it. That's Tim Towdy. If you guys have never heard that before, that's an old. I heard that from Pearl 20 years ago, you know. So doing Pearl type stuff. PERL. This closed captioning doesn't do it. All right, so let's do it. If you want to check it out, you can cat your root host file and see that we have environment prod and environment dev. Those aren't really they're not important for this lab, but the app is. The app database and the app web are going to determine what happens in our playbook. So let's go look at our playbook. Here's our packages install playbook. Starts out at the top like any YAML file with 3 dashes. Why they pick 3 dashes, I don't know, but that denotes the start of a YAML file. By the way, if you ever need to run multiple YAML files inside of one actual file, as long as they're delimited by 3 dashes, they will be read by an API, like if you use kubectl or something like that, it will know to set those as multiple different API calls. So that all happens behind the scenes if you've ever wondered about that. But here's our first little thing that we're going to do. We're going to say, here's an arbitrary name for this playbook. It'll just kick off. Here's the host that we're going to run against. Whatever inventory file you give me, I'm going to look for the host group servers. So right here, servers are these 2 servers. If I had 30 servers underneath it, it would be all 30 of them, as long as they were all directly underneath it. This is INI format. You can also use YAML format if you guys care about that. Now, that's in another lab, but if you want to read about that, you go to the Ansible inventory docs, right? And it's always the first one, build your inventory, and it'll walk you through what these files might look like. That looks exactly like what I'm using, but that same thing in a YAML format looks like that. So it's one of these things like, how do you want to do this? Inspector's right. The weight of our free advice is worth about exactly what you pay for it. So that's a good catch on his part. So now when we've inspected this, so we come down here, vars. We don't have any special vars we want to give it. We do want to gather facts in case we need to use those variables that come with factor to do anything in our system. If we want to stamp timestamps or anything, we need to read the facts first. Become is true, but it doesn't really need to be because we're using root with root's keys. So if we were any other user and we had sudo permissions, we can become. We can also specifically give the become underscore method, and with the become underscore method, we can determine if we're going to use sudo, su. There's like 7 different ways to become inside of a Linux box. I'll go look them up if you guys want, but for the most part, it's going to default to sudo, and as long as you have sudo permissions, you can do what you need. And then here's our tasks. Our tasks are dump all the app variables out from each server. So this task will run against each of the 2 servers that have been connected to by Ansible over SSH by default, which is what we're using. Over SSH, it'll execute a Python debug. There's a little module called debug, and it's going to look on that server for any app variable that has been defined from the inventory. Now, it can look for any variable we want, but in this case, we're looking for the app variable. So on one server, control plane, it'll be appdb, and on node 01, it'll be app web. That's like a debug, like a little sanity check for us. It just pops up. All right. Then we come down here, and we've got these 2 other tasks. One is going to call, and by the way, that's the module right there, debug. Now we've got 2 that call apt. Apt is your package manager in Ubuntu, so we're not doing anything secret here. And the packages that we want to give, we could give one package and just drop it on the same line if we wanted to. But the arguments that we're going to give to package are Apache 2 and PHP if you've got web in your app variable. Well, somebody's got web up here. That's node 01, right? Boom. And the state is present. The state could also be absent. We could be ripping software out of these servers if we wanted with the package manager, right? As long as we got the right permissions, which we do. So we do the install of Apache on one server, and we do the install of MariaDB on the other. Now, when we do that, we're then going to have those. So we'll get that started. We're going to watch that execute, and we'll see it skip the servers that it's not going to run on. So look, there's our debug, and now Apache 2 is getting it installed. It got skipped on Control Plane. That makes sense. Control Plane's not the app for web. It's not a web server, but our Node 01 is, so it's getting installed. And then MariaDB will be installed on the database server. So then we'll have our two servers up with the connections exposed that we expect. So that'll run. Now it's doing MariaDB client and server on the other node. And once that's up, then we're going to run this, which is just a little block that we have that tests all the connections. And it also tests this other connection that I haven't talked about, but that's just a little internal port. I can show you guys what that port is if you want. If you're just curious, why are we checking these? Well, let's go look. We'll verify right here that we can connect to everything, but then we can actually go, if we wanted to dig in and say, what the hell is exposing 40,200? I don't even know what that is. Well, we can go look at it. All right, so Apache 2 got installed on Node 01, and Control Plane got MariaDB. So if we run this, we'll see that we connected on port 80, 22, and 40,200 on, those are all the Node 01. And then the Control Plane, 3306, that's MariaDB. 22 is SSH, and this 40,200 is some of this BS again. So what is that? SS-NTULP grep for 40. What is that? It's some KC terminal process that's part of this lab. Some back end, probably how Killer Coda shell connects directly back to it. I don't know exactly what it is. I bet if I turned it off, this thing wouldn't even work anymore, and I'd have to probably refresh my browser. But the point is, that is a port that's open on this box, and it is something that we can connect to right now. Okay. So we've got the system stood up. By the way, if I wanted to, I could check 80. And this box doesn't have an 80, and 3306. There's 3306. This one doesn't have 80. 80 is on the other one, right? But we know that from this. We know that all of our connections succeeded. Now, NC is the underlying, because some of you might look at that and go, that looks a lot like how Nmap works. Nmap's using NC under the hood. Unless they've changed that in the last 5 years, I'm pretty sure Nmap is just calling NC under the hood. I'm like 95% sure of that last time I looked at it, but it's been a while. I don't really do a lot of Nmapping. I was telling you guys the other day, somebody asked, like, why don't you just Nmap your own server? And I'm like, because if you're root, you look at what's listening. Nmap is when you're on the outside scanning in, but when you're inside and you can go to the authority. It's like you're inside looking out the portholes. I know what my system's listening to here. Nmap is a tool for somebody to scan a box that they don't know, right? You could also scan your own box, but I'm just saying this is authoritative. This is from the inside looking out. Like, I can see which portholes are open. Like, if I were inside a ship, the light would be coming in. I'd know what was exposed, right? If that makes sense. All right. So anyway, I've hammered that enough. Now we're going to set up the firewall and verify that only the ports can be connected to. So, it says you've been extremely successful. Now we need to secure the environment so that nothing else can connect to any other ports that are not allowed. So I'm going to clear this up. I said use the UFW module in Ansible to secure the two servers as required by your GRC. That is an acronym you need to know if you're doing systems work, especially if you're in security. Governance, risk, and compliance. It's where a lot of people land early on in their security career, and they absolutely effing hate it. You say, what? How can you say they hate it? Because all they do over there is audit, and they don't ever actually get to fix anything, and all they do is look at spreadsheets and whether or not things are in compliance, and then go tell people who don't like them, telling them what to do to clean up their stuff so that they don't get hammered by auditors. That's what their whole life is. And some people absolutely hate that and burn out. I've seen a lot of security people get sucked over there, and they absolutely hate their lives. So just know that, like, not all security stuff is like red team walking in the room like we're the bad. That's not how all of security is. Security has some very I'm not going to tell you that's terrible. It's still good to probably get in there, but I've just seen a lot of people with like dead stares going, "Oh, it's time for another audit. It's time for another PC." Yeah, it can be rough, Robodom. You got to think about what you really want to do. That's one of the reasons I tell people, especially like my college students. I'll tell them, "Isn't it nice to know this now before you get out in the industry?" One of the worst things you can do is get out in the industry and start doing this stuff and go, "The hell is this? I hate this." Like I would rather find that out in college and be like, go be a chef. I'll go be a chef. I'll go cook. People need stew. People people need, Chef Boyardee. I'll cook that stuff for them. I don't. Anyways, my point is like GRC can be killer for some people. It really can be. And I'm not saying that to try to be like edgy or controversial. Go talk to your GRC team and ask them how often they look at like spreadsheets of vulnerabilities that they thought were patched out last month or whatever. It's terrible. All right, so we're gonna set up the UFW to only allow the corrected port numbers. So here's our port numbers that we should be allowing. I said right here, you may try to write the playbook yourself, or you can just follow along with the solution, right? So the first thing on this one is we're gonna read what is happening. Oh, look at this, added for inspector diameter to remind everyone to inspect the diameter. Inspector, if you're here, there you go. Look, I told you that was gonna make my Git push, right? I told you that was going to get up there. So there you go. This one is going to do a UFW setup. It's going to go against servers. If you guys recall, what's up? If you guys recall servers, that's still those two servers. Vars, trues, nothing's changed here. But here I changed my debug. My debug only runs if you put two V's in your playbook. So we understand that this var app is going to be there. But if you don't want to see all that noise, or if you're going to hand this over to some other team, one of the things that used to be kind of annoying for me with Ansible is I would comment these all out. There would be a bunch of comments. If you ever went and looked at my Ansible playbooks, I'd have all these comments of stuff that I don't want other people to see, because what happens is if they see it, they're going to be like, something's broken. What is this? What is all this stuff dumping to my screen? And so this is super nice that it can be there, but only if you know to throw two V's in front of it. So if somebody's running a pipeline, if there's a Ansible Tower or what's called the Ansible automation platform nowadays running it, nobody's ever going to see these. It's just going to say skipping, because verbosity is not set to level 2. So it won't be an error. That's the most important thing. Skipping is fine. Errors and unreachable are bad. So then we come down here and we're going to turn on the firewall. So enable the UFW firewall on both. This will go against both servers. And both of them we're going to allow port 22. So that's going to hit. These have nothing to limit them down. So Ansible by default runs tasks against all hosts in the host group from the inventory that we have in the playbook. So all of these would run against all the nodes, right? There's no limiting factor. There's nothing to limit them. But then when we come down here, we're going to allow port 80 by name, Apache, by using web in app. So if web is in app, so if it's the web server, turn on Apache. But there's no name. So Apache, you guys saw earlier, was port 80. That was the when we looked at the rules in that last lab. But there's no name for MySQL or MariaDB. So what we did was we used the port, and we only care about TCP connections in only when database is the type of app that it is. And if you guys did forget, there's our host. Control plane, which is the database server, will get this run on it. And node 01, which is our web server, will get this run on it. Now, if you look at that and go, that's fine. Maybe you got to spend a little time with it. If this is interesting, then you're like, I do want to do the automation stuff. I just need to spend more time with it. This is like lab 20. We have 19 labs before this that get you ready for some of this stuff. This is running right here. This is like us running right now. We're not going slow. Right? There's all the pieces are here to run this. All right, so I said inspect that, right? Inspect the UFW setup YAML file. What is the purpose of each task in the playbook? We talked about those. The first 3 do all of the tasks, and then down here we kind of branch. Now, the logic is just such that it's going to go on one set of servers if we had a bunch of them that needed the web and app, and then also this other one. Now, you could guys, you could do this all kinds of different ways. You could do it based on the name of the server if you wanted to. You could look up stuff about the host name of the device as Ansible knows it. You could look up information that you pulled out of Factor, like what the we're looking just an app, but the behavior could be good different based on if it's in a different environment too, right? Maybe we only are turning this on in our dev environment for right now, so then we have this limited. But if we had big blocks of things that are only going to happen certain ways, sometimes what we do, I want you guys to inspect the file. What is the purpose of each of the tasks? So I want you to remind everyone to inspect the diameter. So that's there. So then they know what to inspect in there. So we've got all these pieces, and one of these things, like I like to tell you guys, one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. So let's run it. Let's see that it does all the things that I think it's going to do. Because when I build these labs, and then when I also do this professionally, I test this on small little, what we call like blast radius, small little subsets of all my servers, so that I always have consoles into them, so I can connect to them and fix things if I do blow something up. But I can test right now, is this doing what I expect? So if I go to this primary node, UFW status, on control plane, I see that 3306 TCP is open and allowed. So boom. This is our database server. That's exactly what I expect. Node 01 UFW status. So we SSH'd over there, verifying SSH by the way. And that one is allowing Apache, which it wasn't a little while ago. This is a new lab. This isn't the lab from earlier. This is a brand new lab. So now let's check. Here's all the things that should work right here. 80 and 22 on node 01. And then control plane should be 3306, and then we go over to node 01. So look, where control plane verified that, and then we SSH over to node 01 and verified that we could connect back. So it's good. Everything's connecting. Then there's two that shouldn't work anymore. That 40200 shouldn't connect anymore. Neither should this other one going over to node 01 and then testing the connection back. That's what this is doing. We're jumping over to the other node, testing the connection back. That shouldn't be allowed either. I said, do you see the timeouts of the ports? Did you expect the deployer? Did the deployer do what you expected? Is that what you would have guessed it was going to do? Right? By the way, if you've ever seen what we call idempotency, look at all these things that had to change because they hadn't been turned on. But what happens when we run, this is one of the most powerful things about Ansible, what happens when we rerun the playbook? Nothing should have to change anymore. So it should just be green. Things still get skipped, obviously, but everything else doesn't need to do anything anymore, so it doesn't. You ever hear people talk about idempotency? That's what they're referring to in Ansible. I can keep doing the same action. I could add, if I had 29 nodes and I had to add the 30th through 33rd node, and I just reran the playbook, it wouldn't change on the first 29 ever again. It would only change on the last 4. That's super useful. Super useful for systems work, because I can't tell you how many times, like right before a change, somebody's trying to add a server or remove a server. It happens more times than I could think of over the years. Definitely in the hundreds of times I've seen change. Now, most of the time you try to kick it back, but you got all the managers on the call, maybe even the director, and there's like, just do it. We'll change the emergency change in later. They mean you're going to put the emergency change in. But, you know, and then the ServiceNow team is coming asking you about crap later. But anyways, we hit this. If you guys have never dealt with like a ServiceNow team, it can be a hassle. This may time out right here, but it's still going to go to the final screen, so that's fine. I thought I had that fixed the other day, though. I gotta look at this code. Hold on. Because see how it timed out, but it still went to the next screen. Look at you learning Ansible. You created a playbook, set a host-based firewall on multiple systems. You were able to configure different ports based on the applications on the servers. That's super powerful. That's super useful for your environment if you need to fill that up. And we'll leave that open. Yeah, this was my last fix of this, was just pushing bin. been true. What is that? Hold on. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that file. I've blown that whole file away and remade it. There's something deeply wrong with that, but I don't have the time nor the energy to mess with it. All right, I'll play with it some other time. I just didn't feel like doing it after. When did I build that? I think I built that on Friday with you guys and got that already. And then I had intended to do these labs on Sunday, but I didn't. One of my brothers had us all over for breakfast, so I ended up missing my normal Sunday stream. All right. By the way, there's our Discord. You guys are welcome to hang out down in there. We have like 10,000. Sorry, 10,000. We have 1,000 people in there now, so it's getting going. There's probably about 200 regulars or so. Not everybody talks all the time, but there's people talking in there, hanging out. So it's good. Let's go pull up. Let's find another lab to do a few more labs. We're at about an hour, so. What's a newer lab that I just put together? Yeah, join us now. Yeah, 10K. Yeah, actually, Robno, I don't know what happened. Somebody must have found something or linked something on LinkedIn. You know, right? That's what it is. But like, we had like a bunch of people yesterday and today hop down in the Discord, and I'm like, no, I mean, I expect a few when I'm streaming or somebody else is streaming, but I don't know what happened. Just people hanging out or whatever. So let's talk a lot, but we don't have much to say. Yeah, it's okay. It adds to the atmosphere, right? Yeah, and try to keep people motivated and stuff. Like one of my brothers is getting ready for a test I hadn't even heard about. He's going to take it. I think like May 1st. He said he's going to take it. It's called the PSEP. Have you guys heard about this? His work's paying for it, so why not? Yeah, if you'd never heard of a PSEP, I had never heard of this. Or if I hadn't heard about it in a long time. And it's a PSEP, and his work's paying for it. And it's just do Python. Iofault Het Tanis is an anagram. It did not come from the book, The Deathgate Cycle. The Deathgate Cycle book series does have a town called Het, but that's not where it came from. And then there is a character in there. Is Tanis a character in there? That's not where it came from, though. It's an anagram. So, but I can tell you guys a little bit about it. So, if you ever go to Reddit, right? Reddit is just, man, it's just people arguing about the color of milk or some shit, right? It's like, it's just terrible, right? And if you've ever been there for even like 3 minutes on Reddit, and I love Reddit for the stories and stuff. I go on no sleep, and I love some of the atmosphere, but some of it's just garbage. Anyways, where I'm going with that is, there's always one person who kind of rises above all the garbage and like organizes all the thoughts and puts a really nice post together, and it almost always rises to the top. And I used to always call that person the saint, and that's where that anagram comes from. Is the saint is somebody who's here, kind of like Saitama. He's a hero for fun. He's not doing it because he has to. He's doing it because people need to know the accurate shit, not all this stuff people are arguing about. And that's where Het Tanis comes from. It's an anagram for the saint. So there you go. Inspector, you know who the last person, Salty Catfish is the last person I know that got his ham license. I think he got it a couple of years back. And then he was going to go for the second and third one, because I think there's 2 upper levels. Let's do one. Which one haven't we done in a while? Let's do a fun one. We haven't done this one in a while. Yeah. Shout out's always good for Salty. He's been streaming a lot more lately. I'm trying to get all of our guys to stream more, because they all are, in the industry 10 plus years, and they have a lot of valuable stuff. And he's a mentor. He teaches people at work. He's always like a team lead. He teaches people how to code and stuff. So he's very, very opinionated, but he's also very good at what he does. So I think you can have strong opinions if you're good at what you do. Like if you're good at producing stuff that works, then I think you should have strong opinions on the way that things should be done or whatever. Yeah, Inspector, I didn't know it actually expired. That's awesome. So, guys, if you don't know, he's talking about FCC maintains a set of certs for ham radio operators. And if you are a ham radio operator, which I got into that pretty heavily in college, if you are, and Radio Shack was open back then, by the way. Radio Shack's not open anymore. You can't order any of that stuff. I think nowadays you just got to go online. But anyways, I used to do quite a bit of that stuff, but I never got my license. Yeah, I never got it. I just remember doing that. And my undergrad, my bachelor's degree is in network communication management. But one of my professors, Bruce Frederick, who's still pretty active in Cisco, Bruce Frederick is he was talking down in South America for Cisco recently. He's a wireless engineer, so he made us do all kinds of, like, I remember we were doing electronics, building modems in one of our classes, and it said right on the top of it, it was a lab for a 400 level electronic engineering class, and we were in like a 300 level networking class. And I'm like, what the hell is this? He's like, I just put it together, and I'm like, I'm colorblind. This shit's hard. I got it all working, but it was a hassle. But anyway, so let's do this lab. Message of the day push. So in this playbook execution to push a message of the day to all servers, this is actually probably a little more useful than some people might think. If you haven't had to maintain, like if you have a big cluster of servers, I run high performance compute. We only have a few nodes users can log in from. They're like the login nodes, or there's different names for nodes. Sometimes they're bashed into a login. But the point is, everybody comes in through one place, right? It's like the old Ellis Island. Everybody filtered in from one place, right? And the goal then is to, as they come in, be able to pass a message to the users. And we do this in our cluster pretty well. Like, we talk about things that are down, how many nodes are up, how much available, what's going on in the cluster. And you can do this stuff dynamically, but I'm also showing here how you could just push it once. So if you've never done it before, this might be a useful way to do it. So your team has had mistakes. Your team has had mistakes. I think I should say has made mistakes, because some users don't know what server they've jumped into, specifically dev or prod environments. So people make mistakes. They're on a server and they're like, I don't know if this is dev or prod. apt-y install all to things. And then they just blow the server up, or they update the server, and the packages were supposed to be locked, but nobody set a lock on the packages, and now everything's done for. This is bad. So one of the things that we've decided that we're going to push a message of the day to all servers to let them know what systems they're on. Can a user still get lost down in a file system and not know what server they're on? Yes. But if we stick a big banner message in their face of you're in dev or you're in prod, it's harder to argue that you didn't know. And again, I tell you guys this all the time. It's the same thing when I get called in the middle of the night. My only thing I want to do is get off of that call and go back to sleep. I do not want to point at networking and get networking yelling. I do not want to point at software engineers that push an update that shouldn't have. I don't want to even point at my own team. The only thing I want to do is get back to sleep, right? So where I'm going with that is the point of this isn't to be able to say, you had a message of the day, you should have, and then we slap them like Bob Blursky, the total Bob Blursky from Fisherman's Labs. What we need to do is try to eliminate user error, but companies have been trying to be at this immutable server system forever, and we're not quite there. Immutable servers, we go stateless sometimes, but that's not always as big a thing. Anyways, I'm getting far afield. So we're going to verify a root host file and root messages a day push files. Can we push these files over? And this is going to be way simpler than the last lab, by the way. But let's look at our root hosts. There's control plane is environment prod, and node 01 is environment dev. There we go. We've got the name of our servers. We've got environmental key value pair variables of it's either a prod server or a dev server. Now you might say, well, Scott, what if one of them is a test QA server? Or I have 15 environments. Well, then you just keep adding them. And you don't have to keep them in the inventory. You can actually have, Ansible allows you to pass in variables like, I think the other day I looked, it's like 21 different ways. So Ansible variables, right? Using variables in Ansible. And right on the left here is variable precedence. Here's all the ways I know, 22 of them, to pass variables into Ansible if you want to. There you go. Right? So, we're not doing any of that. We're doing it right in the inventory file. Well, it's like, I think it's like 5 on that list or something. Actually, here, I'll pull it back up and see. Where is it? We're doing it in the inventory file. Yeah, inventory file, so it's 3. It's pretty low because this is the parameter that always wins precedence. If you put something in at the command line, you can override any other variable by the exact name that's set anywhere else in the playbook. That's an important thing to know. Precedence is hugely important. Some of you guys that code, you do that. K8s alone, no good. K8s are fine. Do plenty of stuff. You might be responding to Inspector, I'm not sure. Alright, so let's get this. Let's look at our root message of the day push. And what's this going to do? It's going to start out with YAML. That's what the 3 dashes are. Message of the day push, that's the name. That's an arbitrary name. I could have put Scott likes to eat chicken or something. It wouldn't have mattered. It's an arbitrary thing. But when it does matter is when this playbook's done and I'm doing a change or something for work and I'm wanting to then grab all this output and just go put it right in my change record, like ServiceNow or whatever my change record is. I can just grab all the output when I'm done. So I like having descriptive names that fit with what I'm doing. Yeah, don't follow Inspector. Just that's the thing, Inspector. Even if you ever think you're useless, you can always still be used as a bad example. So, don't let anybody ever tell anybody that you're useless. And I'm not saying you, Inspector. I'm saying anybody. If somebody ever tells you you're useless, they're wrong. You can always be used as a bad example. All right. Anyway, so we can debug all the environment variables. Again, we just want to see them, right? Yeah. So we want to debug the environmental variables. We're just going to see what they are. Prod, non-prod. Prod and dev. That's what we have. Well, look, I had messed it up, but I would know what my system sees, and then that's going to feed into these other ones. Now look at what we do here. We do a copy in both instances, but if the file is prod, we're pushing over the prod message of the day. And if the file is dev, we're pushing over the dev message of the day. By the way, I could shorten this to do this in one right here. We don't have to do 2 blocks like this. I just thought about this right now. I never thought about it before. We could push a different one, and I can show you guys that if you want to see that. But we could push this in one task. But that's fine. That's fine for right now. We'll do it like this. Hold on real quick. I gotta... Okay. Message day push. Let's run it. This is one of those things. Again, I said one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. I want to make sure things are working. Now, I need to put a lab together that shows how to use a basic little linter. If some of you that probably code much more than me probably use linters already anyways, all a linter does is just check your syntax. Check to make sure that the YAML that you expect to use right there is going to be correct. Now, there's different levels of lint. There's a YAML linter that'll just make sure that playbook we were looking at is actual YAML. But it'll also yell at you for stuff like this. It'll be like, capital T, that's not. And then there's Ansible-lint, so there's an Ansible linter that you can use, and that will do it from an Ansible perspective. So there's that. Hey, how's it going, Rob? I saw you on your paddleboard earlier. I was kind of watching the sunset out there as you were hanging out, so I appreciate you raiding me. I saw right as you got off the paddleboard and we're walking across the street to go back. So, and raiders, always remember pillage and then burn. It's got to be in that order. If you do the burning before the pillaging, you don't get nearly as much. So, all right, having a great one. Hate to raid and run. No, get out of here, Rob. I saw you paddleboarding and working on stuff. It's pretty nice. He's about to Mr. Rogers into his pink pants. Yeah, that's funny. You guys that dropped in, what we're doing a set of labs. By the way, guys, if you don't follow Rob, you really should. His stuff is great. He does a lot of outdoor stuff, which I think is very valuable as an engineer to understand how you go and relax, because you can't just sit at your desk all day. Like, your mind will eventually crack. And I'm only in my early 40s, but I can tell you, like, your mind will eventually go. You gotta be able to do stuff to take your mind off it. Do something. But yeah, follow Rob. He does a lot of that kind of stuff. But over here, what we're doing is we're in our labs. These labs are free up on Killer Coda, and we put them all together, and we're pushing a message of the day based on if the server is in the prod environment or the dev environment. So we were just about to run. In fact, we did just run it, and it pushed over for prod to control plane, which makes sense because control plane has the environment prod variable, and then pushed over the file if dev to the dev server over here. So that's good. Boom. And then now what I can do is I can just hit both of those servers real quick and cat out the message of the day and see what that looks like. Look at that. So that's this big obnoxious node 01, you are in dev. Do not break the server, or this is a safer server to break. Control plane, you are on the prod server. Don't break the prod server. And how we started this out was saying that your team has had mistakes made because they didn't know what server they were in. Again, could you make mistakes even with this? Absolutely, but it's just one more thing. I also like message of the day servers because, or messages, because I can express things to people that maybe haven't been in the cluster for a while. So we use those in our high performance compute environments. So I hit this and it says validation successful. Look at you learning Ansible. You push the message of the day to all the servers and solve the challenge. You also had this button to push if you wanted, and it would just SSH over, and then that's what it would look like. Right? If you just hit that node, and if I were to cat my Etsy MOTD, it would look like that. So I know what the message of the day is when somebody connects to my systems, right? So, and look, it doesn't have to be something obnoxious like that. It can be something smaller. Some people actually change the colors here of the PS1 variable, and it'll be red when it's in prod, and it'll be green when it's in dev. You know, it's really, there's a lot of ways to do this. I'm not being prescriptive. Any of my labs, I tell you guys this, none of my labs are prescriptive. I'm not saying you must do it this way because I am the one doing it this way, and if I'm doing it this way, you all must do it that way. That's not how my labs work. My labs are to show you functionality of tools, and then you go, I can make that better. And I think you probably could. Most of you probably could do this better than me. So, that being said, the goal of our group is to get people into doing Linux engineering, right? We're all hobbyists. If you listen to me or Rob for more than 5 minutes, you're probably at least a hobbyist in this space. But if you want to go be a pro, you absolutely can. There's a lot of resources for free to get you into these spaces. So, those labs, Killer Coda doesn't charge you anything. Yeah, that's actually cool. Inspector, if you've never seen that, hold on, where did I get that from? I have that in our Discord. I think if I search MOTD, it'll come up. Yeah, here he is right here. If you guys want a fun, this is a fun one. Hold on. I'll post this up on the YouTube side, and then I'll post it over here for you guys. I think that should work for you. But what you do is, watch, if you've never been on this, you go to font. You go to test all. And maybe I want to do like Prolog, and then I say test all. And here's all the options for Prolog that we could have. I actually had one, it was Prolog HPC. And some of them are too big, but when you go to look at them, I think the one that I ended up using in our environment for the Prolog high performance compute was, it's coming up here. Oh, I think you can also look at them in, can we look at this in dark mode? No. The one I ended up using, those are all too obnoxious. Look at this, little devils all over it. It's kind of fun. I think I ended up using this one, Ogre. It might not have been Ogre. Hold on, let's keep looking. Oh, I use it. This is the one I have for Prolog HPC rectangles. I just thought that looked good in dark. So look at these. Some of these, and this is all ASCII code, right? So you could drop this in, and this can be on any of your machines. Look at this one, little trains. Prolog HPC TS. Boom. All kinds of stuff for you guys to play with. You don't have to make that stuff yourself. Oh man, Inspector, I like all these things. I like all these are too fun for me, right? All right. So, what other ones might we do? No, we don't really have to do. We don't have to do labs tonight. I was I was thinking of making some labs. There's Ranger. Ranger's moved, at least. Moved to his other bed. He was over here earlier tonight. My dog Ranger is 12 and a half years old, so he's kind of getting old. He doesn't move around too much. He gets up and munches on his food. That's about it. But let's here's what I've been thinking about doing tonight. Well, let's see. We're at an hour 16. I can't go too soon after a raid. I gotta hang out for a little while longer. People that haven't been here before, all of my lab is 3 physical machines and a half rack sitting behind me, and then I have them virtualized down, and then I do all of my Linux stuff through my jump box. So jump box is here. I'm in Minikube there. I'm in Grafana 2 here. Anyways, jump box is here. I can see all my hosts. I can jump into any of my hosts. I've got everything keyed. So like if most of these nodes are down actually. If I were to go to like switch to Grafana 2, let's say, then I just dump into any of my nodes and I can do whatever I want. That's a pretty good little message of the day, by the way, right there. It shows what's going on in the system. And these get generated typically every few minutes. Tell us last time the system was rebooted, all that kind of stuff. That's not a bad little message of the day as like a base one, but you can go change them. Grafana in my environment, so Grafana 2 is running almost everything over here. This is Grafana 2, this is Grafana 2, and this is Grafana 2 in my environment. It's running Grafana 9.7. Sorry, 9.2.7, I think. Hold on. Where's that at? It's right here. 9.2.1. So we're in Grafana 9.2.1. But this one Grafana here, this is Grafana as well. This is running a Grafana, much older version, 6.7.1, because this is the last one that still allows you to pass iframes through. And I had to jump through hoops to get iframes working on this. So this'll, you know, we can watch Ranger Dog as long as I keep this Grafana running back here. That's on a different server. But this is like what's going on in my home lab, what's being accessed, you know, how many users are in the system. We have multiple ways to get in the system down in the Discord. One of the main ones is we have a tool called Guacamole. You can log into the server from anywhere. You have to know how to get in there though, and that's down in the Discord. This is all my logs and failed users trying to log into my server over the last 6 hours, right here. And then security and connectivity are users getting kicked out of my servers forever here. Here's the failed login attempts. And then here's all the total banned users out of my system for the last 90 days. So we're still banning users, but not as much right now. We got 3.1 up to 3.6. So only 5,000 users have been banned, but we've had many hundreds of thousands of attempted logins. We get multiple an hour, you know, times all the hours in a year. So got a lot of that stuff. So that's kind of our monitoring. We have a couple labs on building monitoring, so if you guys like any of that stuff or need to track things in your home labs, we have a bunch of different ways to go and track that. So all Linux under the hood, right? Everything we do is Linux around here under the hood in some way. XCPNG, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going the XCPNG route because it's not really, there's not a lot of features coming out for it still, but it is still maintained by the community a little bit. But a lot of people tend to like Proxmox. I think more people are on the Proxmox side of things as far as free stuff like that goes. And then other than that, we could do, I have some stuff that we could do on Security Primer, PMM. What's PMM? I don't think I've used that. Oh, you're monitoring? Never used it. Is it a... Alright. So it is open source, it looks like. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, no, I've never used that or seen that. Is it the whole thing from start to finish? Is it one tool that does all the pieces? Because most what I build is like some type of tool for aggregation, some type of tool before that for collecting, and then Grafana is the visualization of it. And it looks like they have MySQL 5.7 support. Interesting. What's this? All right. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I haven't played with that at all, ever. So, probably some good stuff going on in there. So, we can talk security stuff if we want. We can talk, go to our prologue presentation. We can talk about any of these things that we want. The other day, I was kind of starting off on high performance compute stuff. Got everything but is oriented for managing database clusters. Nice. Yeah, I haven't. I've never been full data. I've always been the guy underneath supporting all the database servers from the platform side. I've never done direct database type stuff. Not professionally. I've done databases in labs and stuff, but never ran one for real. Yeah, I don't know. I need to build a junior Linux interview questions instead of just the senior ones. I have these senior ones for different technical roles, but I haven't done. I need to do one for like a junior role. Yeah, I don't know. Not really anything there that's probably needed for tonight. Oh, maybe I'll go grab some food or something. Let's find somebody to raid. How's that sound to you guys? We'll do something, and then if you guys want, we'll go through this stuff sometime. This is actually, so I do a lot with ISC Squared. I have a couple of their certs, some of their big ones. And then they've got this generic certified in cybersecurity, like starting type cert. And I put together an outline for it, and I was going to start to fill this out and just talk about some of these different pieces. So probably in the future, probably in the next few weeks, I'll have some walkthrough of how we do these things. Because like we do different pieces of this. So like system hardening, right? Configuration management, baselines, updates, patches. These are things that we've been doing in some of the different labs that we've done, even in the last few days. But I just need to drop them in here as links and say, hey, go do these if you want. If understanding configuration management, important. Things need to stay at a baseline, and then they need to stay there. They need to be updated. They need to keep moving forward as new CVEs come out and new CVSS scores are assessed against your stuff, and you have to have a plan for doing all that. But here's also you going and doing it like with your bare hands, right? Like actually being on a command line doing it, and that's what some of our labs are about. Because we talk about all this. Look, I even have, I think I have it right here. Hold on. I have this right here. This is like a golden image. Like how do we get a system to be hardened to our standard? These are the things that we do right here, right? Those are the things that we do to harden a box or whatever. We talked about this a while back. Making sure that different things are on and available and all that kind of stuff. And we do most of those things somewhere in our different security labs. So we have a lot of that up there. Labs are all free. Again, Killer Coda. There's the labs if you guys want them. Fisherman's labs are pretty good too. His are more of like a sysadmin type lab. So go do his labs, pump his numbers up, make him happy. We'll get him rating, or we'll get him streaming more if we can get him doing stuff. Also, the stuff to the left of this that's not even on the screen right here, this was all that same concept that we did earlier of like a firewall. If I turn a firewall on and I've exposed ports accidentally, the firewall still protects me. Now, you still need good configuration management so people aren't just opening bullshit ports in your system, but the firewall still is another layer. We call it defense in depth, right? More ways to protect our systems. So that's all there. Anyways, let's go hop over here for our little end of stream thing. I'm gonna find somebody to raid here on the Twitch side. Is anybody I know on? Oh, let's go raid Harold. We haven't raided Harold in a bit. If you guys don't know Harold, he does some pretty good work. He's been building a little bot. Even though he is a Windows guy, a lot of the stuff he's doing is coding and low-level controls with Linux-style systems. So we're going to go raid him if you guys want to stick around. Make sure you say hi to Harold. By the way, follows are free, so feel free to follow him or any of that kind of good stuff. But we'll go over there and see him. I appreciate you guys coming by. I will see some of you tomorrow night.